And welcome back, everybody. Good morning. I understand that there's going to be a request from council about the presentation to follow this close of the submitter presentations. Are you happy if we come back to that after we've heard from Mr. Powell and heard the end of the submitter's case? I think that would be
Thank
best
you.
place to put it. Yeah, okay. All right. I thought I saw Mr. Powell here as well, but he'll be back. Okay, you go.
Right. So obviously I'm Antoinette Powell, living at 42 French Parks Road. I live there with my husband. We have two little boys, Owen and Ryder. Owen is 8, Ryder is 4. My parents also live on the property. We have lived there since 2016, built everything that's on it. Our whole property is north of the proposed site, and this includes like where my kids play, everything really, our whole property. So yeah, I have a number of concerns relating to this quarry, particularly in relation to landscape, visuals, amenities, health and well-being of my family, my horses, as well as the equestrian community, because we provide a facility for them. I'm not reading this word for word, by the way. I'm just going to summarize it. So yeah, I believe our property's got exceptionally high amenity values. It's not just a home. It's a place that my boys can explore, where they can grow up, you know, learn about the outside. Where am I? Sorry. And yeah, so the whole of our property is used, you know, from the top of our house area all the way down to the Karapiro stream. With this quarry, with its open pit design and removal of the natural riverbank. Now I call it a riverbank. I think you've been calling it a gully wall or something. Anyway, even if only 10 meters is taken off at stage 1, as it's been advised, but at the end, at stage 5, it's gone. This is directly going to undermine all these qualities and our views and landscape completely. So our amenity values are not general, they are specific, intensive and highly sensitive to the proposed activity. So we bought this property back in 2015, moved there 2016. It's a beautiful property. It's special, it's got a stream, it's just, we love it down the bottom there. We spend a lot of time down there as a family. And yeah, I am very worried about the health risks to my 2 boys. And I know there's been lots of talk about the different risks that are involved, but I am still really concerned. And yeah, I would like you know, if this was to go ahead, there needs to be the proper monitoring in place, whether that be the dust monitoring equipment located in the right place, and also, you know, some form of visual monitoring. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the wind. As I said, we've lived there for a long time, and I can tell you the wind can come straight from us, from that quarry site, like straight at us. The wind will not stop when the guys leave site. So if it does go ahead, there's got to be some sort of, I don't know, I just don't see how they'll be able to maintain it or mitigate it, if that's the word. So yes, concerned about the dust on our property, even with part of the riverbank present, the dust, I believe, will still coat our arena. So we're not on council water, we collect rainwater off the roofs. So our arena roof, our barn roof and house roof is where our water comes from. So any dust that lands there ends up in our water tank because it just gets washed down. So that's a big concern of mine. And obviously we've got the filters, etc. But it's more, you know, it's going to clog the water tank, clog our filters. It's going to be, yeah, awful. Move on to the next one. Yeah. Okay, I know there's been a lot of talk about silica and everything, but from what I've done in my research on videos that I can see, it is a concern. for me because I just think, I don't know if New Zealand's moving with the times in regards to how that we test for it, I'm just not sure if New Zealand is where it should be. So I just believe that just needs to be taken into account here. Okay, in case you hadn't noticed, my boys, Owen and Ryder, are my absolute world. Their health, both physical and mental, is my top priority. And I want them to feel free to explore, play. They're down the bottom, they're searching for fish, looking for eels. Although I hate the eels. Well, I don't hate the eels, they're just, they're just slimy. Yeah, they're just slimy critters. And yeah, they're always down the bottom, whether it's being their bike. Owen trains for cross country down the bottom. He's a very competitive kid. And yeah, I don't want them to feel uncomfortable with me worried about the dust. And also, you know, when it gets to the stage where, even stage 1, I think, we're going to have machinery at the top, workers at the top, and I don't want them seeing what my boys are doing, you know, they're just little kids. Yeah, so again, exposed every day to its risks for the entire life of the operation, it frightens me. And okay, so my visuals, every time I walk out my front door and look that way, if I walk from my house to my barn, I can see the quarry site. And even with the bank staying up at least 10 meters, and I'm trying to visualize it standing there, I believe I'll still be able to see straight into that pit. So it's just that point, that was 0.7. Yeah, so about
Ms. Powell, I was just going to say, please don't feel rushed. We've got
okay.
plenty of time. So
Okay.
sometimes it's easier to read what you've prepared than to
that's
try
all
and flick through it. But
Yeah, okay. Yeah, where am I? Yeah, so yeah, every time I go outside to play, I try and play football with the kids, or you know, they ride their bikes around, or I go do a feed run with the horses. My young boys will be exposed to this quarry every time they're outside. Even when I'm hanging out my washing, which is like behind the house, I've got a view straight at it. Which also, I mean, does the dust end up on my washing? And I can actually see it from my bedroom too. So. Okay, as majority of the property faces the site, about 80% of the places of the property I go, well, I can see it. And whether it to feed my horses, cows, ride in the arena, play football, again, I mentioned that, we'd be looking right down on this quarry site. And I believe this would still be the case with this new proposal to keep up the part of the riverbank. To me, this makes no difference because at the end of the day, or when stage 5 commences, we have the same effect at stage 1. And I realize this is years away, but we don't plan on moving. This is our property for life. I mentioned that already. So yeah, this is, that's all right. I seem to be repeating myself a little bit. Okay, so as I'm sure you've gathered, we are horse riders. We also breed sport horses. So we have some high valued international class horses. We have one of the best indoor arenas in New Zealand. Top coaches have trained elite riders at our facility, including those who represent New Zealand. The noise and dust will not only disrupt this, but also put our horses at risk, as well as some of New Zealand's top horses. Our horses graze right next to the proposed site in a peaceful, natural environment. That peace will be shattered. Horses are flight animals, so sudden loud noises or loud machinery will create a dangerous environment, increasing the risk of stress-related injuries and paddock accidents. And also, you know, my safety too. If I'm feeding a horse gets a fright, or I'm rugging a horse and it gets a fright, or something happens. So yeah, why should we have to change our lifestyle, not be able to provide these facilities to the top equestrian community, or compromise our horses' well-being because of this quarry? If this quarry goes ahead, the risks of riding in my own backyard will be significantly higher. I should not have to reconsider my safety or change how we use our land due to an industrial operation in a rural landscape. The proposed quarry with, and I'm not sure, I'm a bit confused how long they're proposing to go for, if it's 25 years or 35 years. Yeah, just I'm trying to just get the point across that it is going to affect our landscape. It's going to affect our amenities, the visual impact from our home, and yeah, health effects from our family. So obviously I want this application denied. However, if it is to be consented, at the very least, retaining the riverbank in full, leaving it forever and permanently untouched, no exceptions. Probably planting a set of trees like in the form of a shelter belt, so like it's a wall at the top of that, could help reduce the effects on this property we call home, as well as, you know, dust monitoring systems and CCTV in correct locations. And then yeah, I'll just traffic. I know everyone's talked about the traffic, but one point I just wanted to make is I think in one of Mr. Hall's diagrams, he has a picture of where, figure 5, I think, I can't remember which report it is, but he has a picture of where town centre is and then the route where the trucks go. But being a citizen, being a Cambridge person, to me, those roads are part of the city centre. Like they're right next to Countdown. They're, you know, they go through the main road. Victoria Road is the main road, and even the trucks coming back from Hautapu through Victoria that turn left to go down the hill past Countdown, you know, it's hectic already. So I just feel like it will just go from bad to so much worse. And just to comment on the bats, like as Mr. Kessel said, the Karapiro Gully provides a navigational aid for the bats to, and I believe it was to head home to roost. I'm no, as I said, no expert there, but that's their channel on where they know how to go. And yeah, so I just think it's very important that that bank stays up for that reason too. And then yeah, what have I said? So proposed quarry at 77 Newcombe Road will have a devastating and irreversible impact on my family's home, lifestyle, and well-being. The dust and visual intrusion will degrade our quality of life, compromise our children's health, as well as mine and Reese's and my parents who live on the property, and make our property unsafe for our horses and ourselves. And it will create a loss of the equestrian community, because in all good faith, I don't think I could let people ride down the bottom. They're on our property. If an accident was to happen due to something across the stream, yeah, I don't think it's the right thing to do. The applicant has, I believe, failed to meaningfully address these impacts and the long-term consequences for our land, environment, and well-being. Yeah, so in short, I guess, you know, just from our views, our outlook from the property and the way we use our land, I would like this not to go ahead.
Thank you very much. And thank you for allowing us to look over the site.
Oh, that's right.
Obviously a very lovely spot. Just in terms of the equestrian arrangement, this may have been in details already provided, but people can come to use the indoor equestrian area.
Yep,
but
so
also as part of that, if they come to visit the property, they have the ability to go down
they do.
that
They've got to let me know. So we do have 2
Right.
tracks that go down the bottom.
Yes.
You went down, this is what I call the stone track, and then we have another track that comes up. And that's like our Canter Hill. It's a hill, so it's a fitness hill. So we've got that hill, and then down the bottom there's jumps.
Right, yes.
And yeah. So.
And just to understand your concern about activity on the ridge and so forth. Just, you mentioned you wouldn't let people down there mainly for fear of potential accidents. What are you referring to there?
Just in case the horse gets a fright, or
yeah.
that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
From a loud noise or something.
Or just the goings on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right.
I don't want someone falling off and getting seriously hurt on our property.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. I didn't have any other questions. Your evidence was very clear, and I understand what you're telling us.
Thank you, Mrs. Powell, and also for allowing us to come on to your property for the site visit. Do you also have views of Mount Parongia and Maungatautari from your property?
Not Parongia, but I think that's Maungatautari I'm looking at when I'm there. Yeah, because it's behind it, so there's a big, I don't know, mountain range.
That's part of your views
Yes,
that you
yeah.
enjoy
Yes.
as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
You've confirmed that if the proposal were to proceed,
Mm,
that you want that gully wall in its entirety
yes.
to remain.
Yeah.
But also some shelter belt planting
Yeah.
on the top.
Yeah.
On that. Yeah. Do you think that would block any of your views? to those
Well,
other areas?
it would stop the view of the pit that's being
Yeah.
created. So that's my main concern.
Okay.
We do have beautiful mountains on the northern side of us, which is Mangakawa. Yeah, Maungatautari is much further.
And just another question.
Mhm.
Have you seen like bats roosting on your property? Do you know of?
They're very little, I believe, like they are like tiny. I think they have. I don't go
Okay.
looking for them. So
Thank you.
yeah, I think they have. Mhm.
Yeah, thank you for your submission. So I just wanted to clarify, so your concern is, it seems to me that your concern is around the fact that this is going to go on for potentially 25 years in whatever form it ends up being. It's essentially your kids are going to grow up with this.
Yeah.
Is that right? It's just that
Much.
continuous, because I was just thinking, well, so what's your current view, in your current sort of environment? If you look over there, what do you see and
Oh.
hear on a daily basis?
So, I mean, we see, I guess what you saw was
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
dairy farm.
Yeah.
Dairy cows, which is fine. We have cows.
And machines operating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But,
mean,
but not sort of constantly.
no, they're not obviously
Yeah.
operating constantly.
so
He's
just
got a
normal
tractor, I
farm.
think.
Yeah,
He's
Yeah.
got quads. We've got quads. We hear there's a state highway, obviously, it's just on the other side. We hear State Highway 1.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I'm sure there'll be noise too that
Yeah.
comes from the quarry
Yeah.
that we will hear.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, from French Pass Road, we hear the trucks
Yes.
on there. So
Yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah. But it's just that consistency over a very long period of time.
Yeah,
is what-
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I was just thinking further about a question earlier and what you said about preference for retaining the gully wall, and the shelter belt type planting along the top.
I'm
And,
no expert there though.
No, but I just,
yeah.
did you have a species in mind? Obviously, there's a lot that are used in farming operations.
I don't know, when
No.
you drive around and you see these.
Yeah, no, that's right. I just wondered.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
fine.
Yeah.
I mean, there were suggested species and some of the landscape evidence when proposals are put forward. I don't know that there was one for your property in the evidence, but it was that sort of combination of fast growing, taller species with
Yes.
understory, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, no, okay, right, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you for your statement.
No, all good.
Oh, Mr. Powell.
Morning. So Powell, Reese Powell from 42 French Pass Road. So we're the biggest neighbour on a boundary. We are directly to the north of this quarry. So we are the largest impacted property, in my opinion. You can see it on the first map of the page. So we are number one and the most impacted. So to give a bit of a background, I'm not originally from Cambridge at all. I've been overseas for over 20 years and then returned back to New Zealand. But when we decided to move back, we wanted to set up a equestrian facility. And Cambridge is the epicentre for equestrian in New Zealand, hence why we chose Cambridge. It is what is called the home of champions, and it's known for horses. That's why we picked it up. That's why we selected Cambridge. So it was I've always liked Cambridge. It's a cool little town, and it was a place to raise our children. For a career-wise, it was, stay overseas, but decided it's more important to come back and raise the kids, even though the older son was born over in Australia. So we've got an 8 and 4-year-old. So our property was set up, despite being described as a farm building, our big, large indoor arena is arguably, it's the #1 horse arena for a private use in New Zealand. Our facility is a dedicated facility for equestrian. We use pretty much majority of the property, maybe 80%, and it is a horse property. We decided on this property, I don't believe for the training of the horses to have the hills, to have the 2 different heights, because when you get the horses galloping up the hills, it really gets them working, and it's really good for training for the horses. So it was picked because of the different elevations in it. One of the things that we picked up when we did the search for this property were that the river banks, were in a cultural landscape zone. So we naturally thought they would be protected under a landscape zone. So hence the surprise in this proposal. So the property itself, the house isn't that great, like it's okay, but the equestrian facility is really good for a private facility. It's a place where New Zealand high performance train at ours. We have the top guys. We even got one of the Fulton Hogan kids that actually ride, one on the Olympic team that's actually even got a horse at our property. So we've actually got some of the best horses around in New Zealand. It's known, a lot of people come to our property, a lot of people know our property. They come down from Auckland, they travel all the way up. It is known as a really good private equestrian facility. Down the bottom of our property, we have a dedicated and cross-country course and jumps. It is not a farm that is just in paddocks, and we have a back paddock, which has just got the quarry there. If that was the case, I would just plant it out and be done with it. But that's not the case. I have a 32-metre elephant on my property, which is a neighbour, and I don't live in Africa or India. So I have a big problem with 32-metre high proposal. I can't mitigate this. I can't grow a tree. This thing is equivalent to 11-story building. Like, I can't, no matter what I do, I can't do it. I understand some of the other neighbours can have a bund and they can plant out. I completely get that. And if that was the case, I would do it. But 32 metres high, I can't plant down on that river. In addition, that area floods as well, quite badly. So anything that I do plant, even though it could be engineered, often gets washed away. So it's not even something, but to grow a 32-metre high tree would probably take the whole duration of this quarry. So I've seen the amended landscape plan, and I appreciate the landscape, the applicant making an effort on this one, but we can still see it. It's not like I can see this property or this quarry from my back paddock. I can see it from 80% of our property. No matter where I go on this property, I see it. I can see it from the inside of our house. I can see it from our living rooms. I can see it from the front door. I can see it from the horse arena. The bottom of the property, which is arguably the majority of our property, I can see this. I can't escape the elephant in the room. Now, so I'm not being unreasonable. I am a guy and I am pro-business, but I believe it should be in a sustainable way where both parties can work together, not so lopsided, which is what it is. I also disagree that I personally have to pay for our experts to turn this application into Swiss cheese. Like, I should not be having to do this, but it is the case. When I looked at some of the plans, and I do feel sorry for you guys trying to look at some of these drawings, because I live there and I can't even tell what they are. Like, it is hard. At the start, when I spoke to the applicant, one of the first things that broke down the communication, I said, send me the 3D model and send me the silica. This is back in 21. That's what broke it down. When they decided not to give that to me, I said, okay, stakeholder, it's a two-way street. If you're not going to answer me, why should I let you on the property? In addition, it's my own private property. I don't have to let them on. So, like, it was, yeah, like that. So part of the investigations, I also looked into, I'm not going to read this word to word, that to me it gets a little bit boring, but what I want to say is we live in Cambridge. It is the epicenter for horses. We are in the character, this property holds a very high amenity factor. I moved back to New Zealand, not for my career, but to raise our children in New Zealand. I believe that growing up in New Zealand and having horses, I should not be severely impacted, which I am severely impacted by this proposal. It's not a little, it's a lot. It's substantial in my opinion. We've had people over the years come and see our property and they're like, whoa, that's going to make a massive impact. Whoever's seen that and been onto our property, especially down the bottom, and you look up at those hills, you're like, that's pretty big. That's going to really impact. And it doesn't matter if we're feeding out the horses, we're driving down the track, we're training, we can see this. Otherwise, I would just plant it out and be gone. And if I had cows on this farm, it would be a different story. But we ride the horses. We are up higher. We're up at 2.4 meters high when we're walking. So our elevation is actually higher as well. So I have planted some trees around the house, which the landscape architects have seen, but they're still not going to grow. And they're still not going to prevent the other 80% of our property where we see. As I said, our house is not the main thing. We didn't come back to build a house. Otherwise, I would have built the house in town. We build a equestrian property, which helps out, and it's in value for the neighbourhood. It's good for the equestrian community and what we do. In addition, we operate on a world stage. This is the home of arrow helmets. While we're not big in New Zealand, we are big in America. This promotional video of our property is used over in America as well. We promote New Zealand overseas, and overseas people see this video and they're like, wow, New Zealand's so cool. Look at the hills. And they're very like, oh, it was so clean and green in New Zealand, and they want to go there. You know, like, we are operating on a world stage. We are not just somebody down the road. It is visible overseas. And it's also New Zealand's reputation. It's our reputation about selling stuff overseas as well. Now, part of the investigations in Appendix 1, I have a pretty good knowledge. I have a very good knowledge of the local area. Like, I know where the wind comes in from. I support what Carl Miller says. The wind is very different. It comes straight at us from the direction of the quarry. That is why our arena is cladded on that end, which faces out towards Carl Miller's. That's to block the wind. Otherwise, I'd still have it open. That's a wind barrier. The other side is open. So that's why it's blocked. It's actually blocked the wind. Especially in November, December, the wind flies across there. It really picks up later and it just absolutely slams our place. Sometimes we get it around the other way, but in the gullies there, and look, I'm no wind expert, but it does turn around, but it really pelts our property, the wind. In Appendix 1, I did some research, and this is all publicly available on the internet. The soils map is on there. You can do the Google research. And I looked at what other sand quarries are not on HPL soils. The first one, the applicant would know very well, it's their own in Tuakau. Second, I've listed a lot of sand quarries there that are on non-HPL. It can be done.
Just on that second one there, the didn't have a red hash on it, but
Oh,
I
okay.
think it's just by that orange.
Yeah,
the
if you
change
look,
between it's just by the river area.
yeah, if
is
you
that
look at
right?
the Google Earth picture on the right, you can sort of see it
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's not.
That would be
yeah.
in the lighter colour area.
Yeah, correct.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
So anything that's orange or yellow is non-HPL. Okay. So I've identified a lot. The ones in Tuakau there, when we were growing up, we water skied and we chose Tuakau because it's closest to Auckland. That's why they're there, is because of proximity to Auckland. It's nothing special. Like Waikato River's pretty long. Like it goes all the way up. It's not like we're not mining for gold here. So it's not like you're only in a couple places. So, all right. Now, so that's what it shows, is that there are available resources and available ones. And that's just benchmarking. Like anyone can go online and find those, okay? Appendix 2 is about how this quarry compares to others. How does it compare as an application? Is this the norm, what they've proposed? Is this just like, okay, this is just the current practice? No, it's not current practice at all. If you look at 95% of quarries, around sand quarries that is, leave the riverbanks up. And that's all around this area. The only one that hasn't is Revital in Cambridge, which is very old, and that was their original joint venture partner. They were the R in RS Sands, hence why that, so they probably just copied it and that's where it originated from. Everybody else, including latest proposals, which are in getting processed, all leave the riverbanks up. It just, from a, so it's, what they're doing is not normal. Is not even best practice or anything like that. Yeah, and what it does is a proposal does a massive impact on the neighbours. You heard from people yesterday, and it's like, it's not the norm. They can do it. You can see that with their latest proposal, that they've come back and they can leave it up initially. They're leaving it 2/3. My thing is just leave it up all the time. Leave it up permanently. Put the bund at the top. Plant it out. And it fixes so many problems. It's so logical. And, you know, like if you're talking about the bats or erosion, like we know this property. It will fix the visual. It fixes a lot of the noise, everything. So you can do the bunds. You also have, a lot of overburden of this property, which is the subsoil. Like we understand, in our building, we dug a lot of this property. We understand how this is. It's the same on each side of the property. So you have to store that subsoil on site anyway. You can't, my understanding is like we can't do it. So it would be part of the screening. So it's only logical. If you have to store it on site, use it as the bunding, right? That would help and go a long way to mitigate the problems. So there's solutions here, but not in the current proposal. Like you can't be so imbalanced, and it's completely the opposite of all the other quarries and applications around. It's not the norm. It's completely unfair. Like, as I said, it's not our job to turn this into Swiss cheese. I should not be paying to do this, but that's what we've had to do. So, and as a ratepayer, as a local, it gets a bit much. Yeah. And The reason for the conditions and why they have to be live for the monitoring or the CCTV is if I've had to wait since 2001 for the silica results, which only sort of start coming through late last night during this, if I have to wait 4 years of results, what's the chance of me actually getting the accurate data and waiting for them if there's an exceedance? I would say very slim, hence why everything needs to be live. Everything needs to be available. The data can be available for research, and you can use this. Be open with it. When we're doing our equestrian helmets, we publish our safety results. It shows transparency and honesty. We've got nothing to hide. If you've got nothing to hide, make it open, allow it for research as well for future. It's a no-brainer. Then you can see it. These guys can be quiet. We're not going to jump up and down. We can actually see it. We can go online and say, okay, it's fine. But we need it live. And waiting 4 years is a case example. And that's just for something that should have been, in my opinion, in the application in the first place. And I raised it. I raised it with regional council to look at the silica. I raised it. But no one listened, and here we are here today. And even in the S42, I'm not even mentioned as a party. We are the biggest neighbour.
Sorry, was there information received last night? This would relate to the silica.
That's what, I mean, it was late yesterday that Bell sent through some results. It was during the day, you said, so it came through.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was that direct? Sorry, just to catch up on that circulation.
Remember you're on us, Commissioner. I just promoted you. No, remember yesterday you said I could send it, so that was sent to the council and to Vanessa and Gemma. So that was the XRD silica result. And the idea was that Mr. Chisnell could have a look at that and see if that addressed his concern. So that's what I think Mr. Powell's talking about.
All right. This is all no fault of anybody. We're just not in that loop yet. But so that is. Sorry, we might have some questions for you. But Ms. Hollis, is there any submission you're wanting to make in regard to that information that's come through?
Yes, so that was new information to us. We hadn't seen it before. It was just referred to in a footnote previously in Mr. Curtis's, without really any indication that there was a substantive report. It's quite an obscure sort of footnote. I do have some comments to make about it, but I suggest that we finish with Mr. Powell, because then Ms. McConaughey wants to raise something with the panel, which I think will be quite instrumental in where we go with that. So I would suggest
Just wanting to
with your
find
leave
out
that we go that way.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Back to you, Mr. Fair. Sorry, and you've completed your presentation? Is
Yes.
that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for your statement. Pre-read it, and it's helpful that you've taken us through it the way you have. You're talking about bunding, and I was just wondering, were you thinking that would be on? I think your preference clearly is coming through that the entire riverbank quarry area stays as is. Were you suggesting a bund on top of that?
Yes, and then
But you know, if you've seen the bund sequencing plan, so it's got a network of bunds, you know, along the site frontage, down the side around the processing area. Were you envisaging, in your ideal scenario, that there would be something along the top of
correct.
the riverbank if it was retained?
Yeah, if you look at the processing area, that's got bunding around it, and we can't see into that. But where our property is, when we look straight across, we look straight onto the grass, we can actually see it. So it's down the bottom, you won't see it because of the angle. But when we're up the top part of our property, we can straight into it. So you've got to store that subsoil anyway. So just put it along the front. Or at the front and Carl's as well, the Miller at 41 Newcombe. Put it on the two impacted properties.
and that overlaps with a lot of the changes around whether it's partially retained what the erosion sediment control is at stage 5 as far as the current proposal goes. And even as we've asked for clarity on the horizontal extent of what's proposed to be retained up to stage 5 at this point, and ensuring that that stays intact round to the eastern side of the quarry, which I'm sure is the intent, but we just don't have those plans in front of us at the moment. So just coming back to this bunding, so it would be your preference, as I say, the ideal scenario would be retaining the riverbank and then a bund on top of that that was planted in a permanent mix of species.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just on the planting, I had a question for Antoinette Powell. We have the Waikato Regional Council at our place because our property or that valley is a key catchment area for part of the Waikato River Authority because it leads into the Waikato River. So we're in discussions with the Waikato Regional Council about planting that out. They've suggested some species of trees and they were going to contribute to planting it out. They see it as a significant catchment area, the valleys, so they're planting it out. So it's a bit funny for me because I'm talking to Waikato Regional Council about planting the banks. And then when they're out, I'm like, what about those guys right there? So yeah. but there's some proposal about the type of trees. So you can see the irony in this. The other thing as well, I have a real good experience of this local area, of how the sand operates. Like, okay, I'll get myself in trouble, but like we've built some pretty big infrastructure. We've moved some sand there. I've had abatement notice from Waikato Regional Council for moving some sand around. And when you run the machinery over, it goes like talcum powder and it flies. And I'm talking about flying. Like we completely, number 242 French Pass Road, we completely smashed out the other neighbours. Like it got into all into their water supply. The neighbours are bibby. It started off, and that's what started off a bad relationship right from the start because we smashed their property out with the dust. When it's just in the ground or like this, it's absolutely fine. But when you start running over this with the machines, it is talcum powder and it flies. On a day like this, no problem. You know, you got so much rain or stay down. But when you've got dries out, and because it dries out pretty fast, and this is not a 24/7 quarry, this will stop on a Saturday afternoon and it will just dry out really quickly. And the wind picks up. So if you try to like put water on it, it just blows as well. Like it really, really flies. I don't know, as the offer is in the evidence, I don't know if they've actually done some trials and running this over to see how the dust operates, but we're quite welcome to use our property if they want to. 'Cause it's the same type of product. There's nothing special.
Yes, and from the evidence we heard yesterday, we do have some questions around that monitoring while the plant is not in operation. And while there's reference in that to the management plans as to that it needs to be done, we're not sure how that would happen. But what occurs to me is it's not just that weekend daytime period, but presumably in the evening it can still dry out.
Yeah.
Is that the problem that you had when you were doing those works?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our first one was in, I shouldn't laugh, like I feel bad now, but you know, like it was over summer and it flew. Like the local contractor was like, wow, that's really bad. We did it last year as well when we harvest our trees. We had the log trucks in there, so they're heavy, big truck and trailers, class 5. And down the bottom there, the whole road up the top where it's got the metal aggregate, that holds up much better because it's a harder material. But when you get down on those horizontal sand tracks, like those log trucks cut that up as well. We blew the dust right up those banks. Like we blew it up right into, majority stopped at the top, but we actually got over the top as well. So you actually see some of the, on their PM10 monitors, you actually see them trigger. November, December, if you look at the results, you can see us triggering their monitors. So we're down from the bottom, up over the top into them. That's why if you look at their thing, you'll see it start. So I was like, oh yeah, oops. And this is real world scenario. So I'm like, yes, you might have something on paper, but have a look actually how it operates. We know how it goes. We've got really good experience on it.
Sorry, just continuing with that. So that means, so, because obviously they've had those PM10 monitors and for a few years, a couple of years, I think 2022, I think it was, or something like that. So, and the assessment of effects around, you know, the effect of the PM10s or the likelihood of exceeding guidelines was based on a static environment, as in there was no machinery, which is what you're saying, that there could be potential elevation of those PM10 levels with machinery operating constantly in that area.
Yeah.
Because presumably the digging out doesn't
It's not too
generate it
bad.
so much,
Yeah,
and perhaps the stockpiling, because you're not actually dry, but it's just that constant.
Yeah, once you get over it, once you take a
yeah.
machine over it, and the bigger the machine, it will
Yeah.
crush that up.
Yeah, and it's going back and forth.
Yeah,
That's what you're saying from
Yeah.
your experience.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
And if you look at the site's flat. I mean, at 77 Newcombe, like there's no trees along where the freeway is. They've never even planted any trees along the freeway. So it's just a big open site. It just slams straight through into us. So, yeah, but yeah, look, we know it flies. Hence why there was a request of the water filters from experience, hands-on, of us slamming out our neighbours. And even when we were like last end of the year, we also had the neighbours complaining. That was the Ivan Julian up the top. We slammed his property, and that was us working down the bottom. Yeah. Yeah, we've even slammed out, even the Millers, across there, and that's going that way. We've done, as I said, like a bit guilty on some of the stuff here, but like we slammed out a lot of the neighbours on all directions. It's not just one direction. Like we've done northwest, we've done north, we've done south. Yeah.
And how far away would those neighbours be?
Ivan Julia, that would be like that house, I would say about 300 metres.
Okay, yeah.
But there's down the bottom, so it's climbing up 32 metres, roughly the elevation, climbing up 32 metres and then going horizontal to 50.
I'm just thinking again about the assessment of effects, and I think the ballpark is that you normally wouldn't get dust travelling more than about, considerable dust travelling more than about 300 metres.
Yeah, which is about, that's about right. Yeah.
In your own experience.
So, look, my understanding, like from the dust, there's two parts in dust. So, like as our air expert said, the PM10, that's invisible, so you can't see it. And that's the stuff that's light, that flies. So that's why we requested the PM10 monitors to be live. And that's following our experts' advice. The other stuff, which is heavier, which doesn't move as much because it's heavier density, that's the visual dust, or some people might call it nuisance dust. But that's the stuff you can see, and that doesn't. And that's why we requested the CCTV. So CCTV is to see the visual dust flying, and then the PM10 is to see the invisible stuff. So that's why looking at two, and both live, and share the data. If the data's fine, share it. Don't be, it builds stakeholder relationship. And this is where it broke down with the applicant right at the start. When they didn't share, I just went like that. And it just creates friction. If someone asks you a question and you refuse to answer, then of course you're going to be suspicious.
I think you said you've already had dealings with the regional council abatement notices. I'm just a little bit concerned after what you said today that there might be one coming your way after this hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. We were on your property a couple of days ago,
Yes.
and we went down to Karapiro Stream.
Yes.
Is that one of the lowest it usually gets? Water level?
Yeah. When you saw it, because it's been a bit of a drought at the moment, so I would say it's probably the lowest. Yeah, we haven't had much rain. It hasn't really rained around our area since December, really. I know Auckland's had a bit more rain than us, but yeah, not much. Oh. But it's really dry. It's pretty much the lowest. And it'll start building now. We've got a lot of rain this afternoon. And it varies that down there bottom. as I heard one of the residents say yesterday, his property up at Hickey Road, it goes right over there, actually over one of the council roads over the bridge. So it does back up. There's a regional council deal with the neighbour at 41 Newcombe. They're our friends, so it's okay, but the crack willows are in the river. And even though they act as a giant dam and it just goes straight back up. So, yeah. Yeah, but like we like the millers, so but it does flood our property and it goes back upstream.
We drove down a gravel road,
Yes.
reached down the bottom. Does during times of flooding, does it come up to that road, or does
No,
it
it
cover
does-
that road?
No, I mean, you went down to a bridge down the bottom and there was those lower paddocks. It goes over those ones. There's a height off what it is right now. It's well over the fences down the bottom. So you can see the height of a post is 1.2. They're down a couple of metres, so it's up 3 metres maybe. But yeah, like we've only been there for 10 years. So they're looking at 25 years. So I don't know, there's a lot of strange things have happened up in Auckland with the flooding and Hawke's Bay, and I don't know. Like that's why I was surprised that a flooding plan hadn't been put in, because we did put some fill down the bottom and got troubled by Waikato Regional Council again, because they said it's a floodplain. So yeah.
Better stop there.
I know.
Thank you.
But I'm telling you from the local stuff, but yeah.
Part of the interest there too is just, we did hear from somebody, I've got their name now, was talking about the difficulty of planting through that area. They were doing some further downstream, and the effect that it can have on the banks. And I guess this would all be matters that would have to be taken into account with the ecological planting plan that's proposed here, to try and rehabilitate those margins. But I'm sure that's all taken into account. But I think she was saying the trick is that some of the ground erodes, not so much the plants disappearing, although that might be a problem as well. Is that your experience?
Yeah, look, anything like that, it just flies down. So what we do is anything sand incline, especially when the big rain comes, like you probably get a big thump this afternoon, it like gouges out the tracks big time. So what we do is we use the horse manure, and we don't use normal grass. So we put a kuchen or kikuya, which is frowned upon as a grass, but it does hold the sand bit together better. And that's how we get around that. But it does, yeah. It's all right, I'm flat. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Hollis, was there anything you wanted to, I presume that's the case for the PALs?
Before we-
Subject to,
Yes, I
Where we
think
get to.
before we close our case, and before I tidy up some of the loose ends from tomorrow, I think we should hear from Ms
yes,
McConaughey.
okay, all right.
Thank you.
That's fine, thank you. All right, yes, Ms. McConaughey.
Morena koutou, Ms McConaughey, and I'm here for both the Waipa District Council and the Waikato Regional Council. Both councils are seeking at this stage, the hearing is adjourned. The reason for that is over the course of this hearing, there's obviously been updated plans spoken about, and there has been a change from the applicant in respect of the retention of the gully wall, at least until stage 5. We are still waiting for the revised plans, which need to be reviewed and considered, and the reporting planners, particularly Mr. Whitaker, are of the view that prior to speaking to the panel, they do need to see and review those revised plans. I've spoken to Mr. Matheson and Ms. Hollis about this, and I understand there is no issue taken with an adjournment at this stage. We are of the view that it would be in everybody's best interest to address any uncertainty. We have discussed, and subject to your views, directions going forward as to when various material could be provided. And I understand the applicant is happy to have all revised plans provided by the 22nd of April. These dates might seem some far some way out. We're coming up for school holidays and Easter and Anzac, so we've factored those in. And then the proposal from the councils is that a revised set of conditions is circulated by the 6th of May. That's the Tuesday, 2 weeks out from the 22nd of April. We then propose that there would need to be a reconvened hearing and have 1 day set aside. And that at that hearing, there should be an opportunity given for any submitters to respond to the revised conditions, revised plans and anything essentially new. And then we would then have the opportunity to hear from the councils, followed by the applicant's right of reply. And in our view, that would be just beneficial, just to ensure that everybody has sufficient time to review revised plans and properly comment for the benefit of the commissioners.
That's fine. We anticipated, whether it was from the council or the applicant, that there would be some requirement for some sequential exchange of materials. So I think council's position is understood. Probably best to go back to you, Mr. Matheson, as it's your team that's in charge of what information is to come. When we talk about revised plans, what's the scope of that you envisage at this point? So, and what I mean by that, we talked about it earlier. We have a general sequencing, a sort of landscape sequencing type plan.
Why don't I run through
Yes,
what my
please, thank you.
suggested list is, and then you can add to that. Updated staging plans. So that would be both 2D and I think some 3D would be useful. Updated vegetation restoration plans, including some specific details around potentially, as subject to the limitations that Dr. Baber said, some more detail around the density and likely species. An updated erosion sediment control plan reflecting the new staging. And just put the staging plan, I think it would usefully show the duration as well as the areas and the remediation proposal. Because one thing that seems to have been forgotten about in a lot of the discussions to date is that most of the site's going to be rehabilitated. So you're not actually going to look at a whole quarry for 25 years. That's actually wrong. But so that'll get updated so you can see that visually would be helpful, I think. The management plan conditions and a groundwater monitoring plan. I mean, that I think in fairness that should be done as part, maybe addressed in the council conditions. So they were the plans. As well as that, we do need to, we will need to get something from Mr. Mansur on the gully wall bund. And we're also going to ask him to address that little gully E corner as well. Whether or not Mr. Curtis needs supplementary evidence will depend on what counsel for the POWs comes back with. The reason we put the reports in is he said he relied on 7 to 16%. He basically got told as an expert that he had no basis for that. That's why the report was put in, which he referred to in his footnote. If people are going to take issue with that, then he needs to be able to respond to that. If they agree, well, actually, that's what an independent laboratory came back and assessed it as, then I don't think we need to take it any further. And then the conditions, but that's sort of, we need to wait and see what the council had. So that was on my list, but I don't know if commissioners had anything else.
That covers most of the aspects. I wondered, you had a side discussion yesterday with the Millers, and I wondered how that progressed.
Yep, really well. We've now got their phone numbers. The benefit of a bit of time is that we'd want to go and have a further chat with them on site and just see what we can sort out, see what their preferences are with the bunding. I mean, as I said in opening, we're happy to work with them in terms of whether they want a bigger one, a smaller one at a different time. You know, we can work with them on that.
Could I ask, as part of the updated plans, is it going to be based on the proposal as was presented on the first day with the gully wall partially intact for part of the first 4 stages?
Yeah, well, there's no, and I think it's helpful to understand as part of that. I mean, one of the issues will be, of course, retaining the productive potential of the land, because leaving the gully wall intact, which is, you know, clearly the PAL's preference, you know, one's going to need to balance out the MPS HPL requirements to restore highly productive land and a short-term period of removing that gully wall at the end of the process. So, I mean, that will need to be balanced out as well.
Isn't that the HP4 land though? Sorry, LUC4.
It's only 4 at the moment. My understanding is because of the slope.
Mm.
But we need to, and remember that was the point. The slope was being moved back, so the preference would be to keep as much. You know, the proposal is to restore as much HPL land as possible, and obviously if the gully wall is retained forever, that significantly impacts on the amount of HPL that can be restored. So that's going to be the planning balance, I think, ultimately. But it'll be useful because those plans will actually show the relative areas, the volumes, and you'll be able to get an idea as to how long that process might take. So, but and as I say, all of that's come up because Mr. Mansell went on site and said, okay, well, that's fair enough. Now I've been here, I can see that. And, you know, that was put forward. So, you know, that'll be a question for the commissioners. I think the PAL's made their preference quite clear. We'll show you the options and, you know, it'll be your decision.
Is there anything Mr. Matheson or raise? I think we've captured the things that we want. If we're having this adjournment and time to consider matters further, it's a timetable here, direction. So I'd like to try and cover off, if we can, this additional air discharge consent matter. You've already provided evidence and legal submissions on the point. I think as part of, I think what we're looking at is I'm anticipating a memorandum from yourself to go with all this information, perhaps as on an interim basis. It's not your reply, as I would at this point. But it would be helpful, I think, if there's any, I'm just concerned about if it's determined that there is a consent requirement, I want to be quite clear on the scope issue and what that consent looks like and what conditions might be necessary in respect of it.
And yeah, thank you. Very happy to do that. I mean, my thinking on that was going to be to basically provide an air discharge permit in draft. I think Lou Wickham was pretty clear that the type of conditions that she's asking for, they're asking for, would be the same as what would be on that air discharge permit. So I don't think there's any mystery about that. But from a structural perspective, I think it'll be helpful for the commissioners to see that in total, and then we could happy to discuss with the regional council on that. So my proposal would be to put in, and maybe I can provide that by the 5th at the latest, and ideally by the 5th at the latest, a memo with that draft.
Thank you. I mean, ordinarily I would have sought comment from the council on the points, are a bit out of order on that respect, but I think we've got that time. Happy to have discussion with the council on that point. That would be useful to cover off sooner rather than later.
Yeah, will do. Sorry, just the other point, we haven't heard back from the submitter about the silicosis and the other Fulton Hogan Quarry. I just wonder whether Miss Berry or someone could maybe chase that up.
the circulation of the.
Well, the
what
submitter
was
was,
sent.
yeah, the submitter was going to come back with the names of the quarries that there've been silicosis events at that were owned by Fulton Hogan, which we haven't heard anything, so.
Okay, all right, well,
Yeah.
let's bring this.
We have received an email, which, that was Mr. Kenway. We have just received an email.
Oh, have you? Okay, it's Richard Kenway, I think, or.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, with 4 documents just come in.
That's spooky
All
timing.
right.
Let's see.
There's a bit of information flying around that, yes, I'm not feeling quite on top of in terms of how we pull that into the mix. So let's make.
Yes, thank you, sir. So yeah, just turning back to that issue about the information that was provided last night, as I said earlier, that was new. It didn't form part of the application material to date. So before we wanted to put it in front of our witnesses, there is a procedural matter of the commissioners accepting it in and accepting it as evidence for the applicant's case. And we also wanted to be confident that it was all of the information on this matter that was going to be provided before we put it to our witnesses. But I think if we're going to adjourn, and as suggested by Mr. Matheson, I would suggest it would be better covered off as one of those matters that is dealt through that process.
I think, how about, I think what we'll do is record its receipt in the direction, along with the change that was received, the timetable that we've talked about. I think the provision for reconvening will allow your witness to talk to that, or make provision for that. Of course, there might be other matters that people want to raise. So we've got this indicative timetable, 22nd of April, revised conditions 6th of May. What sort of time frame would we anticipate for reconvening? Is that something like a week later?
Really be guided maybe by the commissioner's availability. No doubt Ms. McConaughey will be busy sending people to jail, so we'll check her calendar and then yeah, illegal reclamation. Yeah. So maybe if the hearing secretary can advise what dates the commissioners might be available, we can work around that. But I'm thinking mid, maybe that May the 16th onwards or something, maybe 17th.
This 6th of May for the revised conditions, this is a circulation date, not a receipt by council. We could have them circulated by that date?
That's intended to be the date they're circulated.
Okay, yes. So then I think 5 days would be sufficient. That does, okay, just a moment. I'd like to have a good indication of the possible date at this point before we leave, so I'll just confirm. So the 15th would would be good. We'd rather not leave it to the Friday because we don't know who might want to speak and we may just need the flexibility of the 16th.
Sorry, I
Oh.
can't. That's
Oh,
my
okay.
daughter's graduation, so I can't miss that.
Yes,
Sorry.
it's all right.
I could do the 16th. I think a day will be. I do think a day should be ample, but
A day will work.
Also have to confirm a venue.
Yes. Okay. All right. We can only leave it as a potential at this point, and then we'll have to confer. It's just while everyone's in the room, it's a lot more efficient to try and work that out. Is it possible? Could that be done while just before we leave today, Mr. Budd?
We're thinking the 16th.
Hmm.
at least it's not the Cambridge Town Hall. That's probably booked out.
And we might not be able to hear ourselves. So, yeah. All right, we'll put 16th into the direction. Okay, very good. In terms of the council responses, and I apologise for not raising this at the beginning, but what panel will be most assisted by memorandum from those experts and planning staff that will be making comment, and they can just speak to that on the day. Just make sure we don't miss anything in translation. So yes, that will be helpful. Okay, so I think we won't go any further than the 16th in terms of what happens after that, but obviously we're anticipating a reply at whatever time seems right after that.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I mean, I'm happy to indicate that.
No, that's right. Okay. All right. Well, that sounds good. We'll have that direction out in the next day or so and take it from there. So we'll look forward to seeing everyone here in a few weeks. So, all right. Well, thank you all for attendance and the way in which the hearing's been conducted. Appreciate it. And yeah, we'll adjourn until the next